Good morning. Today we gathered to discuss the fiscal year 2020 budget request for the House of Representatives. To begin, I would like to welcome the officers and officials of the House to our subcommittee hearing. Testifying before us are the Honorable Cheryl Johnson, our new clerk of the House, the Honorable Paul Irving, Sergeant at Arms, and the Honorable Phil Kiko, Chief Administrative Officer. Ms. Johnson, welcome back to the House and congratulations on your new assignment.
Thank you.
We're very excited to have you. Ms. Johnson, you've joined a talented team of officers and officials that work hard each day to ensure we have the tools we need to legislate. These incredible teams provide unmatched support in providing safety, security, administrative, technical, consulting, and legislative solutions to all members and their staff. Congratulations again, and I look forward to working with you during this legislative year. Before we start with the testimonies, I would like to take time to thank all the officers, officials, and their staffs for the extraordinary work over the past year, and especially during the massive transition to the 116th Congress. The transition of a Congress affects everyone in the House. Each transition brings its own unique challenges, and even more so when there is a change in majority. This transition was one of the largest, and I applaud each of your team's efforts in making the 116th congressional transition seamless, quick, and manageable, even if it maybe didn't seem seamless, quick, and manageable to you. Just as long as it looks that way on the outside, I guess, is all that matters. So thank you for your hard work. Now let's get started with the work of this subcommittee. The fiscal year 2020 budget request for the House of Representatives is $1.4 billion. This request will allow us members an opportunity to retain and hire the best and brightest. The work we do here is important, and it requires a certain set of skills to negotiate legislation that will move our country forward. This request also includes funding that will help us to maintain and grow our physical and cybersecurity postures, two areas that remain a top priority for this committee. Later this morning, we will hear from the Capitol Police. Lastly, this request includes funding for the newly established Offices of Diversity and Inclusion and Whistleblower Ombudsman. Overall, this request stands to provide members and committees the resources necessary for us to represent our constituents by affecting policy and implementing laws that will address our country's critical needs. With that in mind, I look forward to each of your testimonies today. At this time, I will yield to my colleague, Ranking Member Jamie Herrera Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Cheryl Johnson. Clerk of the House, congratulations on your new position, and I appreciate you taking the time. I know we didn't get to connect last week, but for reaching out to come in. I understand this isn't your first stint in public service. In fact, you've served in a number of different roles, but we welcome you here in this role. And welcome back, Paul Irving, Sergeant at Arms. I didn't have the pleasure of connecting with you. Would love to do that. And Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Kiko, nice to see you again. The fiscal year 2020 budget request for the House agencies is $1.356 billion, which is $123 million over the current enacted levels, and this is the largest request for the House since I got here, actually, in 2011, not 17 years ago. I like to give him a hard time, because someday someone's going to do it to me, right? It all goes around, comes around. Much of the work each of your offices do on a daily basis is obviously behind the scenes, but collectively you are truly responsible for keeping this place running, including the IT network, which is never sexy, but it is so important, that allows us to communicate, and the financial systems that pay our bills and meet our payroll, and the voting system that helps us authenticate the legislative process. Without the services of the House officers, we would not carry out our constitutional duties as members of Congress. So with that, I look forward to hearing from each of you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. Without objection, each of your written testimonies will be made part of the record. I ask each of you, the clerk, the sergeant at arms, and the chief administrative officer, to summarize your remarks and highlight your efforts of the past year to the committee. After opening statements, we will move to the question and answer. During the questions and answers, we will, for this hearing, adhere to the 5-minute rule. Ms. Johnson, we will start with you.
Good morning. Chairman Ryan, Ranking Member Herrera Butler, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for this opportunity. On behalf of the Office of the Clerk, we appreciate your continued support. The Clerk's Office is a nonpartisan organization that provides the procedural support necessary for the orderly conduct of the official business of the House and its members and committees. Thanks to your support, our office can keep House operations running at the highest standards. I will begin with an overview of what we do. The Clerk's office supports the legislative process from introduction to engrossment and presentment. Bill clerks process all introduced bills and resolutions. Tally clerks record all floor votes. And journal clerks produce the constitutionally mandated Journal of the House of Representatives and handle presidential messages. When bills and resolutions pass the House, enrolling clerks prepare the official text for transmission to the Senate or White House. Along with announcing pending business on the floor, reading clerks convey bills and messages to the Senate. We are hard at work whenever the House is in session, day or night. Our role extends beyond the House floor. We support committees, members' offices, and in January, recognizing the importance of sharing our institutional knowledge, we worked with the Parliamentarian's Office and the Congressional Staff Academy to hold 3 training sessions for all committee clerks. Topics included the new Truth and Testimony form, which we prepared at the direction of this subcommittee, filing committee reports, submitting remarks to the congressional record, and records management. These sessions will continue during the year. Our Office of Official Reporters provides reporting services for all committee markups, hearings, and depositions, as well as for many investigative interviews. These services remain subject to increased demand as a result of expanded deposition authority and oversight needs. The Office of House Counsel provides House employing offices with legal counsel and training on employment matters, including anti-discrimination and anti-harassment laws, family and medical leave, fair labor standards, workplace safety, and other matters arising under the Congressional Accountability Act and related reform measures. We also manage congressional offices that become vacant. We work with remaining staff to continue the office operations, oversee district office leases, and provide constituent services until a successor is elected. And as detailed in my written submission, we perform many other services. For fiscal year 2020, we respectfully request $32.8 million to carry out our existing and new responsibilities to the House. Much of what is new in our requests would support non-personnel items, primarily mandatory equipment replacement and a modernization of the Legislative Information Management System, also known as LIMS. LIMS is a critical part of the flow of legislative information. In a very real sense, it is what enables the House, committees, and members to conduct legislative business and allows the public to follow that business. LIMS gather bill information, floor activity, member and committee information, and executive communications from the House and the Senate, and then distributes that information to the Government Publishing Office, the Library of Congress, members, committees, House offices, and the public. As always, the accuracy and reliability of our data is a high priority. We would greatly appreciate your investment in this critical project, which I believe strongly would enhance the functioning and transparency of the House. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Herrera Butler, and subcommittee members, in my few short weeks, I have gained immeasurable respect for the more than 200 employees who make up the office of the clerk, many of them carrying out duties that are required by the Constitution. Together, we support this institution that we are privileged to serve. Again, I thank you for your support, and I look forward to any questions.
Mr. Irving?
Good morning. Thank you. House bringing all of the buildings into the secure perimeter. As I've noted, many members receive threats and direction of interest communications that raise concerns for them, their families, and their staff. In light of these threats and concerning communications, my office interfaces with members' offices seeking security coordination for off-campus events in the Washington, D.C. area, in their districts, or elsewhere across the country. My office works with the Capitol Police to provide a level of protective support that is based on threat intelligence and proactive criteria which may form the basis of an enhanced level of support. Protective services can range from security awareness briefings in the member's district to a request to local law enforcement to support a public appearance by the member or additional assistance in the member's district by the Capitol Police. With regard to district office security, my office continues to build upon the success of our district office security program that was launched in the summer of 2017. Since its inception, the program has assisted 375 district offices with the installation of intrusion detection security alarms, cameras, panic buttons, and coordinated local law enforcement support of nearly 450 public events and town halls across the country. We've documented almost 13,000 outreach interactions with member offices. Focusing on the Capitol complex here in Washington, D.C., we are working toward the implementation of House garage security to ensure full screening into the House office buildings and in line with the Capitol and Senate office buildings. Focusing on my FY20 budget request, in addition to my request for items required at the start of any new Congress, my largest increase is a request for funding for the Joint Audible Warning System. This is a shared effort with the Capitol Police, Architect of the Capitol, and Senate Sergeant at Arms to replace the aging wireless emergency annunciator system introduced as a temporary measure following the events of 9/11. The system components of these pager-like devices, located in all D.C. offices, are beyond their end-of-life dates, battery components are no longer produced, and system support by the vendor is limited. 17 years after implementation, the funding requested will help procure a new, separate, non-cell tower-based system for emergency notifications throughout the House, and replace the system components, including 2,500+ devices currently in every office, meeting room, hearing room, and work area on the House side of the Capitol and House office buildings, to ensure that emergency voice notifications are transmitted via secure radio frequency to all offices and meeting spaces throughout the campus. As I've noted, my additional funding requests are more fully contained in my extended testimony, such as an increase in FTE to better serve those we support in the House, as well as support for the 2020 nominating conventions, replacement of GSA-rated safes for members to store classified and sensitive information, and member and spouse identification pins and congressional license plates for the 117th Congress. I can assure the committee that my FY20 budget request has been prepared in the spirit of zero-based budgeting without jeopardizing mission-critical services provided to the House community. Thank you once again for the opportunity to appear before the committee. I am so appreciative of the committee's unyielding support and partnership as we strive to maintain the delicate balance between strong security and free and open access to the Capitol complex, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Irving. We appreciate your leadership. Last, but certainly not least, Mr. Phil Kiko.
Good morning. I want to thank each of you for this opportunity to present the CAO's FY20 budget request. The CAO is the largest House-specific organization with over 700 employees who provide a broad spectrum of services. Our employees assist offices with purchasing, voucher processing, logistics and asset management, technical support, payroll and benefits, wellness, child care, confidential employee assistance, and legal representation. The CAO has recently taken on new service responsibilities, such as administering in-person workplace rights education for an estimated 16,000 individuals and standing up the new Office of Employee Advocacy. With the Chair's support and guidance, we launched a house-wide wellness program that provides proven offerings such as mindfulness and stress management for our hardworking employees. We've also started preparations to conduct a comprehensive compensation analysis that will include diversity data and better inform House employment decisions. In my written testimony, I go into great detail explaining the CAO's implementation of its strategic plan, specifically the progress made with respect to our customer, process, stewardship, and employee goals. For me, the strategic plan is essentially a wellness program for the CAO in the services it provides, new and old. To provide exceptional services, the services themselves must be closely examined, reevaluated, and revamped. We needed to put a place in process to look inward in order to improve the services we provide. Investing in our workforce is critical to the CAO's success. We still have a ways to go with regards to implementing the strategic plan. Some members and staff have indicated that they have experienced improvements. With regards to customer feedback that we have received, I would certainly hope that people here have seen that as well. We are changing the way we approach service delivery, adding greater emphasis to customer feedback and greater consideration to this unique environment. For example, we launched a totally revamped training program for House staff through the new Congressional Staff Academy. Training offerings includes courses on appropriations law, official committee clerk training, House financial systems, and leadership training for chiefs and district directors. We've responded to the overwhelming demand for food service improvement. We recently opened a new Ann Pizza and regularly host multiple pop-up restaurants around campus. Aubon Pan is opening up at the end of this month, and we have 2 additional branded sites will open on campus the Tuesday after Labor Day. The CAO is modernizing, actively migrating house-wide applications to the cloud, expanding internet bandwidth, and improving data connections for DC and district offices, while exploring ways to improve and modernize constituent engagement platforms to meet the 21st century means of communication. Last but not least, there is the paramount responsibility of protecting the House against malicious actors constantly seeking to gain access to House data. In just 1 month, every month, the CAO blocks an estimated 1.6 billion unauthorized scans, probes, and connections, including 300 to 500 million cyber attacks, and an average of 12.6 million questionable emails to thwart phishing attacks. In 2018, our cybersecurity office deployed nearly 615,000 patches and 3,000 malicious indicators to over 16,000 network-connected devices. Investments in our IT infrastructure and cybersecurity amount for nearly 60% of the CAO's budget increase. Just 2 months ago in January, we witnessed a mass attack against the German Parliament, the second one in the past 2 years, and with respect to Australia's Parliament this year, investigators are looking into a massive, likely state-sponsored attack. It's the cybersecurity threats that keep me awake at night. If you haven't already, I encourage each member of the subcommittee to visit the House's Cybersecurity Operations Center. I think you would learn a lot. I think it would be very beneficial. The continued implementation of our strategic plan, the hopefully noticeable service improvements and rollout of new services, and of course, information technology and cyber defense remain our top priorities. In fact, if you exclude the requested increases associated with mandatory initiatives like workplace rights and education, the Office of Employee Advocacy, anticipated COLAs and longevities, and critical information technology and cyber infrastructure investment, the CAO's request for FY20 is less than 0.5% over FY19 enacted funding level. Of course, we realize we're competing with other offices, and you know the committee hasn't received a mark. We would appreciate your consideration, and we will move forward with it at whatever amount we get. I can just say that the CAO will continue to strive for perfection. Nothing less will do. Thank you very much.
Begin the question and answer session. Ms. Herrera-Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple questions, and I might skip around a little bit. I will start with you, Mr. Kiko. The Wounded Warrior Program.
Yes.
So it's one of the House's I would say, most supported initiatives. In fact, we had a fellow who participated in the program last year who's now moved on to my staff full-time. And I believe last year the subcommittee directed you to report back on any recommendations to improve the program. And I just want to know if there was any improvements or anything new that you've discovered.
Well, we've been very aggressively attempting to match up wounded warriors with member offices. We are at an all-time high of 55.
We had tried for one, and the first time I got one was last year, and
Okay.
it's been amazing.
Good.
So I think that's probably a result of your aggressiveness.
Yeah, so we're trying to, you know, there's a process to get wounded warriors, and we are aggressively pushing that process internally, and there's room for more. So my only suggestion is to continue to have members request, and we will comply.
Skipping over to totally different, cafeteria, Longworth Cafeteria.
Yes.
I just wanted to bring this to your attention. I had a fellow colleague who mentioned it. And as you're thinking about some of these other stations, there's at least one place where to order, I think it's the sandwich stuff. To order, you go do it on a computer, and then you go get in line. I wanted to make sure that I'm sure you have, but I wanted to hear what you had talked with, or what you have to address customers who are blind, who are, you know, visually impaired, or who are in wheelchairs, because there's no interaction with an employee for like a whole chunk of it. And I wanted to hear what
Well,
your
I think
plans
that's
are
a
on
very good point, and we will make sure that we will look into that. I know there's a lot of, you know, disabled people that come up here, and I know that with regards to people on wheelchairs, we have things in the cafeterias, but I'll look into that a little bit more,
'Cause I think
especially visually impaired.
This one is for, you can only order using a computer.
Right.
And so
I think it's when you walk in, you can punch in your order.
I
Is that
thought
the
this one
one?
was well, and this may have changed. There's a couple. This one was brought to me by one of my colleagues, but I've been there when it was the sandwich line. It's like you got to go order online, and I made the mistake of getting in line, and that was a big problem.
I'll check it out. I'll follow up, seriously.
I was like, I'm sorry, but as you start thinking about people who, I mean, you have advocacy groups all the time who
Right.
come up and who are differently abled, and I want to make sure we're not only making it
agree.
available for sight abled folks. And then I wanted to quickly, I think this is you, Mr. Irving, district office security and I know there are a number of programs that you're expanding. What do you offer for public events for members at home in their home districts? What can they avail themselves of? So not necessarily just securing the physical location of the district office and the mail, but.
We coordinate very closely with all law enforcement coordinators and ask each district office to appoint a law enforcement coordinator to monitor and coordinate security in the member's district. And we do this as a force multiplier because we don't have, you know, the Capitol Police or staff to go to every district office. And we ask, and we provide every law enforcement coordinator with a booklet with information. We provide security awareness briefings. We provide templates on how to set up district events. And we do ask if there is assistance required, we'll actually send people out. But we do usually leverage local law enforcement and ask the law enforcement coordinator of the district office work with local law enforcement to set up those events without us flying out. But again, if we need to fly out, we'll certainly do so to provide assistance.
And I assume you have a program for outreaching to all the new members who are unaware of where to start on all this?
Yes, we have a very, very active outreach.
Good.
And almost every new member now has a law enforcement coordinator.
Right.
A lot of communication between our District Security Service Center and those new members.
I have just enough time to ask about garage security. So one of the things I keep hearing from different folks is, well, they were doing the security, so we're adding this, or we're doing, taking advantage of the timing. The security renovation, the renovation wasn't a result of your security request. Are you doing the security upgrades because the renovation is happening?
They're really happening
I'm trying to understand the genesis.
Okay, the genesis was right after I arrived, I wanted to, a vulnerability that had been identified in the garages. So I strove to implement security in the house garages so that everyone in the house office buildings had gone through security screening. It just so happened that as I was in discussion with leadership and with the architect of the Capitol on the project, they said, we are undergoing, or will be undergoing, a garage rehabilitation program in the Rayburn garage. And I said, you know what, that's great, because to add security screening vestibules, it would be nice if we actually built the vestibules out and the screening centers out a little bit to provide and better accommodate the screening equipment.
Versus retrofit, you're able to build in what you need.
So the timing turned out to be perfect.
Okay.
And we're now in the process of working very closely with the architect and with the Capitol Police. For the architect, it's an infrastructure issue of building out and adding certain things. For the Capitol Police, it was a manpower issue. So
that was my next question, is how does that...
Well, we've all worked we've been working this since 2013, 2014 timeframe to build up Capitol Police manpower to be able to staff all of the additional screening areas, and working with the architect so that as they build out and rehabilitate the Rayburn garage, we do both, and they fall in line, and we're on track to implement garage security this year, later part of this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Mr. Ruppersberger.
Yes. Sure. Well, first thing, I think you all do a good job, and we know you do a good job, Rookie. My former job, I was county executive, about 800,000 people. So I love coming back to this committee. It works a little, and seeing all the things you have to do. And I really think with all the missions that you have, you've done a great job. And you're responsive, you're dealing with issues, and plus you've got at least the House side, 435 members that are always looking at you and having issues. I want to bring up an issue that we had in our office, and we've resolved it now, but I want to bring it up so we can make sure that it doesn't happen again and we can set a system. I have a new staffer who has a rare disease, and so we had to address her disability issue as far as parking and other issues. And they were pretty challenging. And then when we started to ask for help, we got a lot of pushback wherever we got. This is my staff, it wasn't me personally. The pushback on parking, they were asking all sorts of inappropriate questions. They were not service friendly, so to speak. We got bounced around and on a continued basis, and eventually, wherever we went, we were able finally to resolve it, but it took a long time. And it was pretty frustrating for her. It was embarrassing for her. And what I would think is that maybe we could have a little bit of training on a point person. If someone had, and you talked about the wounded warriors, and we have more people that have disability, that we need to really have a point person who can get involved and not have to go through all the issues. Look, parking is a tough area to manage. Everybody wants parking, they come in and out. But when you have a legitimate issue, and if you need doctor's reports, that's fine. Then we'll get them and whatever. But I think if we could develop a point person to go to make sure that we can work this through and find out a way. And it took a long while and a lot of anxiety and you know, it was really not our service as best as we could. So I'm just throwing that out. And any comments about it or where?
No, I do believe that responsibilities for a disabled person is diffuse. You know, everybody has somebody has this part, somebody has that part, somebody has that part. I do think that somebody in the House of Representatives, whether it's in the CAO or somewhere else, should be able to figure out just to pass on the person and then to make sure there's follow-up to make sure whatever issues they are with the member's office should be followed up on.
Well,
I'm supportive of
Well,
that.
I just think we need to know a contact person that has a little bit of training to
Yes.
deal with that. That's all. And we've resolved the issues, but it took a while. Now, let's get back to the area of cybersecurity. You know, it's probably, other than nuclear weapons, probably the most serious issue. You said what keeps you up at night? Cybersecurity?
Yes.
Yeah. How about spicy Mexican food? Is it?
Sort of depends how old it is.
We have a .gov that, in my opinion, still, and I do a lot in the area. I represent NSA and when I was in intelligence. And, you know, our .gov still has a lot of issues that we have to deal with. Are we starting to coordinate our .gov a lot better than we were, say, a year or two ago? Could you explain where we are on our cybersecurity issues?
Well, I think that,
And I know that's a broad question.
well, all I would say is that in the last two to 3 years, there's been a heavy emphasis on upgrading our cybersecurity capabilities. And it's always this conflict between security and members want to use devices and those kind of things, however they want to use them. So we have been gradually making that better, and internally we have a lot of, we just are doing a lot of things to clear
But
out
what I'm
the
saying,
chaff.
you've got all these different areas and departments and whatever, and you have one person in charge who might be more technically advanced than someone else. Are we starting to coordinate the whole .gov, and are we getting advice from other agencies? NSA, Homeland Security, as an example, has a tremendous mission, and they don't have the resources or the manpower to do it. And
No,
that takes a while.
yeah, no.
That's what I'm talking about. Where are we? Because we were really in bad shape years ago. Now, have we started to improve? What are we doing about that? Do we have a contact person who's going to be coordinating it, who has the expertise?
Yeah, let
And
me
where are
just-
we getting our people, too, who have the expertise? Because everybody wants to hire them now, too.
Well, I know that Paul will have some comments on that too, but we have periodic meetings with people from NSA, the DOD, the Department of Homeland Security. They're very involved in, and even on our public networks, looking at things and making us aware of stuff. There's actually the House of Representatives participates in CyberGuard, which is a red-blue where you're being attacked,
Yeah.
but then you're stopping. We have participated in that. We actually, you know, have relationships with foreign legislatures like, you know, Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand, you know, European countries on cyber issues. And we share a lot of information with the Sergeant of Arms, and they share information of us from the, you know, the
I'm looking at it
FBI.
from the management perspective. Who's the contact? Who's in charge?
We have a CISO, we have Chief Information Security Officer, Catherine Spindor is here, and she's the head of, and that's what it is, and it's fairly rigorous.
And there are a lot of challenges there, and it's
There is.
changing all the time. There's no question. Do you have anything to say?
No, just going to echo, I think that Phil's team does a great job. They work very closely with law enforcement, with FBI, Secret Service, DHS, and others that are sort of at the cutting edge of a lot of the cyber issues. So I'll just echo that I think his team does a great job, and I leverage my law enforcement contacts as well to assist. But I think that they're doing about as good a job as they can based on on the incoming threats.
Getting the hook.
Gentleman's time
Good.
has expired. Gentleman from Hawaii. Mr. Case.
What did you say? Hawaii?
Nice pronunciation, by the way.
Not bad.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's really
Not
good.
bad for an Irish Catholic from Ohio, you know?
First of all, I echo all the comments to all three of you to thank you for your service. I've told you in my office, the quieter you are, the better the job is, the more likely we are to underappreciate you. So this subcommittee is one place where we get to say that very directly. So thank you so much for all the work. You know, I'd like to follow up on my colleagues' questions about cybersecurity because, boy, that was a lot of zeros in terms of the number of attacks and kind of like along the lines of a federal budget, which is starting to be some real big stuff. I actually had to look it up and see what was beyond $1 trillion, and it's quadrillion. I forgot that, but you know, we're getting into that range. He asked, well, let me back up. You've got a huge problem. I assume it's still accelerating very rapidly. Are those? I mean, is the trend still upwards in terms of the number of attacks? And you know, this is across the board, but I assume it's true with us as well, right?
Yeah, it's the number of attacks, and it's also the sophistication of the attacks. People now have algorithms, you know,
Right.
and it's just not the number, but it's the intensity, which is part of the number, but it's also how sophisticated the attacks are. And many of the attacks are from nation states.
Well, that's my next question because you can say that without qualification that you believe some of those attacks are nation state
Yes.
sponsored or directed or actual nation state attacks.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And those obviously are coordinated with the rest of our government, right? I mean, that's an
Yes,
attack
yeah,
on all of us.
we do that, and part of our defense mechanisms is just trying to figure out. We can tell if they're from nation states too, or we can tell from activists or whatever. But we're on that. Yes, and we coordinate, like I was just saying, with a lot of government agencies that help us to identify things too. In advance, we don't want to be on the 2 weeks, 3 weeks later with something happen. We want to have real-time information.
Now, knowing that this is obviously an incredibly serious issue, as we saw with Australia, and knowing that they're accelerating, knowing that the sophistication is increasing, a very direct question is, do you think you have the adequate funding to maximize the protections that we need, both from a personnel perspective? I mean, what is behind your specific funding request in this department, in this area?
Well, we're requesting $11 million for, HR, House Information Resources. Most of that is related to cybersecurity. A specific amount, $2.9 million, is for the specific Office of Cybersecurity to increase contractors, those kind of things. So we have the most up-to-date people and resources. And then also part of our the other part of our request, while it's for house-wide kinds of issues, it's to move into the cloud. If we move into the cloud, then that's a lot more secure than not moving into the cloud. And you can also have a lot more security enhancements, go right away to members. Because a lot of times, we see malware and then we have to do a patch, on somebody's computer. And you want to have that done real time. So we believe that, the request that we have is adequate. But, I'm not going to say we couldn't use more, but I think, we're just not throwing money at it. Part of the issue is how we use computers and software and hardware and devices on campus as well.
Is your funding request based on, I assume it is based on some kind of a master plan for how to fully protect the legislative branch from
Yes.
cyber attacks?
Yes.
And so you've got a plan, and you've got very specific priorities in that plan, and those priorities are priced out. And are all of those priorities priced out and in your?
Well, in our plan, and it's not a plan just for this year, but it's, for the next 3 or 4 years. So we do have a plan, and I don't know if it's totally priced out yet because the threat changes, but we do have a plan, and that's what we're adhering to. Correct.
As you understand it today, looking out into the future, this plan, this appropriation request reflects your plan priorities.
That's correct.
Okay, so you haven't somehow censored what you're asking for based on an expectation or anything else. I mean, this is what you think we need to.
Right. I
get the
had,
job done.
lengthy internal meetings on this, and this is what people recommended to me. And I accepted those recommendations based on these are the professionals in this area, and this is what they thought they needed, so this is the request was put forward. I didn't say, no, I only want this kind of increase or this kind of increase. I said, tell me what you need.
Thank you. So I think you said you were in touch with other parliaments, et cetera, across the world. So in the case of Australia, which seems to be about the most egregious, direct, pretty good example of what can happen, lessons learned there and incorporated into our plan, or?
Well, they're still trying to assess it, you know, so we have visited Australia, and we are in touch with them, but we don't know what the lessons learned are yet, because I just checked on this, and this only happened like 6 weeks ago, so they're trying to figure out what happened and how they're going to fix it, and we're still in touch with them on it.
Okay.
I do know last year, there was an incident in Great Britain, you know, where there was a hack attack, and the fact that they told us the day before that this is happening, we were able to then stop the similar kind of attack that would have happened against our House representatives here.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Just to follow that line of questioning, do we know who was trying to do this in Great Britain and Australia? And
Well, I think in Great Britain,
is it state-sponsored?
I'm not sure. I don't think it was state-sponsored, is that?
I think it was, but I don't think that it's divulged
Right.
that much as to who it is. We have ideas and we have some private conversations with
But it's not
public.
clear. I think Australia has a pretty good idea that it was state-sponsored.
Can you repeat those numbers in your testimony about how often this is happening to the House?
Let's see here. I would just, because there's so much interest in cyber, why don't we just pass this out too? This is sort of,
Thank you.
I'm sure you've seen many of these, but that's sort of something we shared at new member orientation. Let me get these numbers. What's 300 to 500 million cyber attacks each month, and then we have a lot of 1.6 billion unauthorized scans, probes, and connections. So if you're a sophisticated cyber person that's trying to figure out what to do, you first scan, you first probe, then you scan, and then you try to connect. And so it's a very structured kind of way in which to get in. You just don't, sometimes it's brute force, you just go after it with brute force, but some things it's a lot more sophisticated. And then we have, we stopped 12.6 million questionable, emails. That's the phishing. That's still the most popular way to get in a network is through the phishing. People answer an email, but now they're even, it's even getting more sophisticated because they copy an email and then they send it, and you're not even sure if it's correct or not. And we're actually working because, in the members' offices, there's, scheduling people and press people. We're trying to have software that we could develop that's more normally sophisticated than just phishing. But we're trying to figure out ways to more comply with what the needs of the members' offices are, rather than just stopping. You can't see that. We're trying to figure out ways to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. One of the things, I just read an article the other day about the Chinese. We don't want to get in a bunch of classified stuff here, but having the ability to, I guess, access our networks here, and some of the technology we are using, not we, the House, but in the United States, using some of their technology that may open the door for them. One of the questions I have with these, the ability for someone to turn on our microphones, turn on our cameras, listen to conversations, is that something, because obviously a lot of this runs through your office as well, is that something that you're exploring on technologies that could help through hardware to protect members' privacy and some of the, discussions that we may be having?
Yeah, we are. We're trying to, I mean, it's an insider, you're thinking about it as an insider kind of threat because of how stuff is used?
Yeah, just the ability for some nefarious actor to hack into our speakers on our phones, our cameras
Well,
on our phones.
that's sort of the next wave. What they're looking at now, the cyber threat now is, and it's emerging into mobile devices. We also, even up here on the House, we're trying to close off ports in committee hearing groups so people can't plug in, in the network when somebody's not here. But we do have it is the future is what you're talking about. And of course, we're looking at that, and that's part of our plan. And we're trying to have a more secure mobile network up here. We're working on that as we speak.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you for your leadership on this. I can't imagine dealing with this day in and day out, because we leave this hearing and we try to help you as much as we can, and then we go about our business. And you and your team are dealing with this day in and day out, so we appreciate it. So
I just wanted to also say, partially in response to Congressman Ruppersberger's question, we do try to hire the brightest and the best, whether it's contractors or we have people that used to work in the intelligence community, and that's what we try to do. And we have a lot of people that actually want to work here in the House. They want to protect the House, and because they have this sense of duty. And so, we're able. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. I don't think we've had a problem in hiring these kind of people. And we're constantly trying to stay up to speed, you know what I mean? Not be 5 years old and training and everything else. So
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
I appreciate it. One last question before we go to the final round. I want to ask Ms. Johnson, for your fiscal year 2020 request, it includes $3 million for the Phase 3 of the modernization, which we talked about the other day in my office for the LIMS system. This is obviously important, critical for legislative operations. It's my understanding this system's about 30 years old and requires redevelopment to be reliable and strong. Can you discuss the goals of Phase 3 and what is planned to be accomplished in Phase 4 and then Phase 5?
Phase 3 would make the system more nimble. LIMS is a repository that's used by both the House and the Senate, and Phase 3 would give us every aspect of a bill, and let from enrollment to engrossment, and also help with the reporting of the committee reports, the floor reports, Senate action, as well as executive action. And as I testified, Phase 3 would cost about $3.1 million.
And then how about the projection cost for Phase 4 and 5? Do you have an idea?
Phases 4 and 5 would be another $3 million. The 5 phases should be completed in 2024. The $3.1 million would be for fiscal years 20 and 21. We would not ask for more money until fiscal year FY 22. And then Phase 5 would be in fiscal year, would begin in fiscal year 23 and be completed in fiscal year 24.
So it'd be three, and 3. Or 3 for 4 and 5.
3 for 4 and 5,
4 and 5,
correct.
okay.
A total, LIMS would be a total of about $7 million.
Okay.
We've already received roughly $1 million. We're asking for 3 this year, fiscal year 2020, and another $3 million in 22, for a total of $7 million.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're going to do a little second round, lightning round with a 3-minute time limit. So Ms. Herrera Butler, you good? Mr. Ruppersberger, you have any follow-up questions
I
on?
just want to plow through more on the cyber. It's a massive problem, as we know. Just as an example, China, who probably is the most aggressive in spies and also when they do in cyber, our Commerce Department estimated that China last year stole from American companies, academia, whatever they wanted, over 600 billion, not million, billion. That's a lot. And, you know, it's something we're going to have to deal with. And, you know, Russia is as sophisticated as we are, and they want to know what we're thinking and what we're saying and all of that. So, you know, it's an issue that I think we have to keep talking about. You understand it. You have expertise. I'm surprised you really have kept people, because I know a lot, even like at NSA, a lot of our millennials are leaving to go with higher paid jobs. And, you know, you've got a lot of the key people there in the mid-60s. So, you know, that's an issue that we're going to have to really keep focusing on as far as the employees and the training and that type of thing. And my suggestion, what you're saying, just keep working with your networking and law enforcement is really important to keep dealing with this. Because other than nuclear weapons, probably, you know, the most serious thing we're dealing with is cyber attacks. And we've only had one destructive attack in this country, and that's Sony. But once that gets started, it could really be a disaster. So, you know, I hope and our committee will stand behind you in whatever you need to do, as long as you're doing it right in the cyber field.
Right.
That's all I have to say.
Yeah, thank you. Just as a wrap, just, Mr. Kiko, I'm looking at all of the cyber attacks, and I'm thinking of the House Wellness Program as a great antidote to really some of the pressure and stress. And I want to just take a second to thank you for your leadership and your team that you've developed. I think my goal in this committee is really for the House, the Congress, to be on the cutting edge as much as we can on how we handle ourselves, how we conduct our business, levels of efficiency, how we treat our employees, and talking about being able to retain top talent and staff. We have to compete with a lot of these tech companies that are embedding wellness programs within their within the charters of their organization as a component to being able to compete and think creatively and not be living in a completely high-stressed environment. So I want to say thank you to you and your team. You've put together an amazing operation already in a very, very short period of time with a very, very small budget. And I think it's critically important, so I wanted to just take a minute to thank you and your team for that. Mr. Irving, thank you. We rely on you a great deal behind the scenes, although once or twice a year you're very famous and in front of 50 million people. You're the most famous guy that nobody knows, you know? But we all the travel that members do, we know you and your team are behind the scenes there, so we want to say thank you to you for everything you do and think about when we're not thinking about it. And Ms. Johnson, we're excited to work with you as we move forward here. We know you have a big job, and as I said the other day, we want to come down and take a look at the operation, and we feel really lucky to have you, and congratulations, and we'll just
You have a good
keep
background.
moving on.
Thank you.
Great. So this committee is adjourned. Thank you.
Well, that issue I talked to you about,